Hi, I'm Nick Palmisano, and this is the Bad News Network. Let's just jump right into it since my phone has been absolutely blowing up with all of my Patriots-hating friends. Robert Kraft, the owner of the world champion New England Patriots, has been charged with soliciting a prostitute in the great state of Florida. The major story here should not be about whether or not Mr. Kraft did this. The real story is the fact that the United States has a major sex slavery problem. This is a crisis that we at Ranger Up have talked about ad nauseum, with two members of our team, Matt Finney and Tim Kennedy, spending years of their life doing undercover work to try to bring these people to justice. Everyone knows this is happening, but yet for some reason we choose to look the other way and just let it happen. If you want my opinion, and this is only my opinion, I think prostitution is gross. It's not something that I would ever want to be part of for a host of reasons. Having lived overseas for about a decade of my life, I can tell you that there is a significant difference between prostitution where it is legal in places like Germany where the women or men are afforded protections under the law, both in terms of health and in terms of their safety, and places like the United States where this is a black market. The black market forces women to gamble with their safety and their health. If there is an issue, they can't really go to the police because the very act that they're calling about is a crime. So you have one situation where a woman or a man is operating with legal protection, deciding what to do with his or her body in a controlled environment. You have another situation where we're feigning morality, but really we all know it's happening, and we're criminalizing the man or woman that is involved in prostitution while affording them no protection. Which one of those choices is truly the immoral one? Anyway, back to Mr. Kraft. There is a chance that he didn't do it. He has categorically denied having done it, and district attorneys are politicians. They have agendas, and if there's anything that we should have learned from all the false allegations over the last few years, it's that we should wait and at least see what the pending investigation produces. If he did do it and he thought this was an adult woman making an adult decision about what to do with her body, as a maximum freedom kind of guy, I am not going to judge a septarian widower about this kind of an act. However, if he did know that these women were there as slaves, as the biggest New England Patriots fan that you're ever going to meet, I hope he rots in prison for the rest of his life. In the greatest hoax since Paul McCartney disappeared, Jussie Smollett has hate crimed himself. Upon learning that he was being cut from the show Empire, Jussie Smollett decided to hire two guys to pretend to beat him up and then douse him with bleach and put a noose around his neck. In the middle of a Chicago snowstorm where literally no one else was out because it was too cold to stay alive. He then gave his first Emmy-worthy performance ever when he gave a tearful interview on television that resulted in a veritable orgasm of reaction from politicians. Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, both Democrats running for president, jumped out to the forefront of this whole endeavor, calling it a modern-day lynching. They went on to say that they hoped the assailants were processed to the fullest extent of the law. Those statements became problematic when 14 detectives working around the clock in Chicago, who probably had nothing better to do, figured out that Smollett engineered the entire thing himself. What a piece of shit. I mean, Smollett is garbage. But you know what? He's Hollywood. So there was a 75% chance of that anyway. I actually have more of an issue with the politicians and the personalities that jumped on this and pushed this narrative that gives the impression that Americans everywhere are committing hate crimes and finally people care about it because it happened to a gay black actor. These people know that in politics, in order to win, it isn't enough to have a vision of a good future or something to aspire to. You have to build an enemy. For Harris and Booker, Trump is the clear enemy, and it helps their cause to show that hate crimes are on the rise under a Trump presidency. So instead of saying, I'm sorry, they're actually backpedaling and saying, while the facts of this case may not have been perfect, in the greater scheme of things, they were still right because hate crimes are everywhere. Let's put aside the fact that this is a chicken shit way of dealing with being embarrassingly wrong. In a way, they are right. The FBI has reported a 17% increase in reported hate crimes between this year and last year. They've also reported that in the last 3 years, reports of hate crimes have gone up. But a big piece of this, which the FBI has annotated in every single report that they've put out, is that they're not sure whether or not these crimes are going up or just that reporting is going up. There are two reasons why reporting would be going up. The first is that individual police departments are getting better at differentiating a hate crime from a normal crime. The second reason is that people are just more comfortable with the concept and there isn't as much of a pushback when somebody tries to report a hate crime. So naturally, people are going to be more comfortable reporting. When this stuff happens, it's really important to remember what we actually have control over. There's a false impression that the battle over hate is going to be won on social media, that the more we opine in essays or on Twitter, that the more people are going to come into the fold and believe as we do. I'd argue quite the opposite, that the battle over hate is won mother and father to son and daughter. The battle is won teacher to student. The battle is won coach to athlete. And this generation is the least hateful generation in history when it comes to the issues of race or sexuality. Hate crimes are evil. Racists exist and they always will to some extent. But this generation is the best ever. The kids in college right now, the kids in kindergarten right now, for whatever faults that older generations have with them, and some are deserved, these things are not an issue for them. This is fading over time, and it's fading at a faster rate than it ever has been. So while the Jussie Smolletts of this world want to breed hate for their own personal gain, and while the Harrison Bookers want to capitalize on it for theirs, right now there's a black mom having a sleepover with 2 white kids, 3 black kids, and 2 Asian kids, pulling her hair out because it's 2 a.m. and they won't go to sleep, and she is doing more to fight racism and bigotry than anyone in Congress right now. And that's the fight we can all win, showing kids how to be decent human beings. Anyway, enough about Smollets. Let's talk about some other total clowns. Burberry has apologized for making a hoodie that has a noose around its neck. In their apology, the lead designer acknowledged, "Look, I now realize that suicide is not a fashion statement. And to be honest, this whole thing has me so upset that I kind of want to hang myself." 2 ISIS brides, one from the US and one from the UK, have asked to come back to their original countries after spending 3 years helping their husbands try to murder coalition forces. Both the US and the UK have responded by revoking the citizenship of both women. But some people out there are upset, saying these 2 women just made some teenage mistakes. Wait, what? Here are some examples of teenage mistakes. Drinking and driving, knocking someone up or getting knocked up, saying stupid things under the pretense of emotion, wearing Che Guevara shirts, doing drugs, eating Tide Pods, and trying the gallon of milk dairy challenge. Here's some examples of non-teenage mistakes. Murder, taking the skin of the person you just murdered and wearing it as a coat. Liking the Kardashians, putting a human body through a wood chipper, or joining a bigoted, sexist, fundamentally evil organization that is actively working for the downfall of Western civilization. You know what? You can stay in whatever shithole country. Oh my God, did he just say shithole country? All countries, cultures are equal. No, they're not! And she can just enjoy the squalor that she's currently living in. Now that doesn't mean that they won't sue for citizenship. In fact, both are. And if they win those legal battles, I look forward to both of them spending the rest of their lives in prison. President Trump is moving forward with the Space Force Directive, which looks to place the Space Force under the Department of the Air Force. The Air Force has thus far proposed a budget of $13 billion, which is slightly higher than the original budget of $5 billion. Nevertheless, this is one of the few initiatives Trump has that seems to have support in both parties and will likely move forward. The Navy and the Marines are not happy, however, citing that in science fiction, in particular Star Trek, the ships are always naval vessels and the troops are always Space Marines. The Air Force replied, "Look, you need to trust us. We have the best interest of all the branches at heart, and that's why the very first thing we're going to do under the Space Force Directive is eliminate the A-10. Jay Spencer made school history this week when he became the first wrestler from Pope John Paul II High School to win a state wrestling title. What makes the accomplishment even cooler is that he's legally blind. When asked about the state championship, he had this motivational message to send. Don't let what anyone thinks of you change the way that you think. If you believe you can do something, you can." He then paused and added, "I feel like I have to clarify this for all you dumb shits out there. I don't mean that you can morph into a dragon or learn to fly or anything absurd. I just mean that you can fight through challenging situations and accomplish great things." In cool science news, a Japanese spacecraft has landed on an asteroid and is preparing to shoot it with a bullet in order to catch the debris that bullet creates and bring it back to Earth for additional study. One Japanese scientist described the operation as follows. It's kind of like Armageddon, except there's no Bruce Willis, no miners, no Aerosmith song, and the fate of the world isn't really resting on our hands. Come to think of it, it's really nothing like Armageddon, but on the bright side, at least there's no Ben fucking Affleck. In socialism news, Bernie Sanders has announced his run for the presidency. In other socialism news, Venezuela has murdered 2 people and injured 14 more as those people tried to clear a path so that humanitarian aid could get into the starving country. For clarity, the socialist Venezuelan army is murdering people that are trying to help get food into the country because the country is starving to death because socialism. Hashtag socialism, hashtag Che Guevara, hashtag Cuba, hashtag Venezuela, hashtag AOC, hashtag Bernie, hashtag idiots. And finally, in the most Florida story of the week, Mayor Dale Glenn Massad fired at a SWAT team that arrived at his front door, announcing that they were coming in for his arrest. The mayor, who had his medical license revoked in 1992, is a domestic abuser, a drug user, and a Miami Dolphins fan. And yet he still was elected mayor because apparently he is the best that Port Richey, Florida has to offer. And with that, I'm Nick Palmisano, and this is the Bad News Network. Our news is at least as bad as the news you're getting already, but no matter what happens in your life, don't beat yourself up over it.